All right, buckle up, data fans, because today we're diving headfirst into a real-life data architect interview.
We've got the transcript, and let me tell you, it's a juicy one.
Like, seriously, by the end of this deep dive, you're going to feel like you just aced a job interview for a super high-level data engineer slash architect position.
Yeah, we're talking about the kind of stuff that separates the pros from well, everyone else.
Exactly. So our source material, it's this awesome interview with a principal data architect who's basically grilling this candidate.
This interviewer does not pull any punches. You get to see how a candidate thinks on their feet and applies all this knowledge to some pretty gnarly problems.
Like real-world challenges, not just textbook stuff.
Right, so think of it like a masterclass in data management, but way more engaging than sitting through a lecture.
So much more engaging, trust me. All right, let's jump right in. The first thing the interviewer throws at the candidate, this challenge of maintaining data quality in a matrix organization. Now, that might sound kind of sci-fi.
Yeah, matrix organization. It's like something out of the Matrix.
Right, but actually it's a pretty common setup in a lot of large companies.
It is. And it basically means you've got people reporting to multiple bosses or teams, which sounds great in theory.
Sure, more collaboration.
Yeah, lots of cooks in the kitchen.
But then when it comes to data consistency, it can be a real nightmare.
It is.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. You've got data scattered across all these different systems, different teams using different names for the same thing, maybe even different definitions. It's like, how do you even know what's what?
Yeah, you mean because different teams might be working with the same data, but using like different naming conventions or definitions.
Exactly. And without some really clear guidelines, processes, you end up with this tangled mess of inconsistencies.
Total chaos. So that's why the candidate immediately stresses the importance of having a really robust data governance framework.
Right, which is basically a set of rules, processes for how you manage data across the entire organization.
Yeah, kind of like a universal translator for your data.
Exactly. It's about establishing those standards, making sure everyone's on the same page.
Like a data dictionary.
Yeah, you could think of it that way. And the candidate goes on to mention some specific tools that can help enforce data quality, like Great Expectations and DEEK.
Oh, yeah. I've heard of those. Aren't those open source libraries for like doing automated data quality checks?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Think of it like guardrails for your data pipelines, right?
Okay.
You define what you expect from the data, like the format, acceptable values, even whether certain fields are always filled in. Then those tools just automatically flag anything that doesn't match.
That's awesome. It's like a spell checker, but for your data.
Exactly. You catch errors before they become a bigger problem.
So smart. But even with those automated checks, I mean, wouldn't it still be a challenge to just keep track of all those data definitions across like a huge organization?
Yeah, that's where you need a centralized metadata repository. It's basically your single source of truth for all those data definitions.
Like a giant dictionary for your data.
Exactly. Everyone agrees on what customer means, what revenue includes. No more arguing about definitions.
Love that. Okay, so we've got this data governance framework, automated quality checks, a centralized metadata repository. Sounds like a pretty solid foundation for data quality, right?
Yeah, that's a good start, but now the interviewer throws a curveball.
Uh-oh, hit me with it.
Okay, so imagine a huge e-commerce platform struggling with inconsistent address data across their systems.
Oh man, that sounds like a logistical nightmare.
It is. You've got addresses in the CRM, the order management system, the shipping platform, all slightly different formats, typos, missing information, you name it.
Ugh, I can just imagine the customer service calls.
And the lost packages, and just a huge waste of time and money.
So how does our candidate tackle this address apocalypse?
They start with data profiling. It's all about analyzing the data to understand its quality, spot the patterns, identify those inconsistencies.
Okay, so you got to know what you're dealing with before you can fix it.
Exactly. And they specifically suggest using Apache Spark for this, that powerful engine for crunching through massive data sets, right?
The big guns.
Along with DEEK, which we talked about before for those quality checks.
Okay, but what are the specific metrics they focus on? I remember them mentioning completeness, accuracy, and consistency. What do those actually mean in the context of, like, addresses?
Okay, so completeness is pretty straightforward. You have all the pieces of an address. Street, city, state, zip code, the whole shebang.
Yeah, no half addresses floating around.
Right. Accuracy, that means making sure the information is correct. Are street names spelled right? Do zip codes match cities?
Makes sense.
The candidate even mentions comparing addresses against a validated database, like the USPS database, just to be extra sure.
Oh, wow. So no more eyeballing it.
Exactly. You're validating against a trusted source.
Smart move.
Yeah.
And consistency. That's about making sure the same address is formatted the same way across all those different systems.
Yeah, you got it. If someone enters their address as 123 Main Street in the CRM, it should be synced as 123 Main Street everywhere else. No variations, no inconsistencies.
Okay, consistency is key. But what did they actually find when they profiled all this address data? What kind of mess were they dealing with?
Okay, brace yourself. They found that 30% of the addresses had some kind of inconsistency.
30%, that's huge. Like 1 in 3 packages could potentially go to the wrong place.
Exactly. No wonder they were having problems. So the candidate gets to work building these data cleansing and standardization pipelines, like taking all those messy addresses and running them through a filter that corrects typos, standardizes the format, removes duplicates. It's a huge undertaking, but the results are pretty impressive.
I bet. Did it actually make a difference?
Oh yeah, big time. After a month of these pipelines running, they saw a 95% improvement in consistency, a 90% jump in accuracy.
Wow, that's a serious win.
It is. Imagine all the shipping errors, customer service calls, wasted resources they avoided by simply cleaning up their data.
Talk about ROI. That's like a textbook example of how data quality directly impacts a company's bottom line.
Absolutely. And the candidate even talks about how to maintain those improvements, right?
Yeah, because you don't just want to clean up the mess and then let it get messy again.
Exactly. They emphasize the importance of automation, monitoring, setting up systems to automatically flag any new inconsistencies that pop up.
So they're not just fixing the existing problem, they're preventing it from happening again.
Exactly. It's a much more proactive approach.
Smart. Okay, so we've talked data quality, but what about keeping all this beautiful, clean data safe and sound? That's a whole other challenge, right?
It is. And in the next part, we'll dive into how the candidate approaches data security, especially in those highly regulated industries where the stakes are even higher.
Sounds like a plan. We'll be right back after a quick break.
And we're back, diving even deeper into the world of data.
Where the waters are about to get a whole lot choppier.
That's right, because we're talking data security now.
We've got all this beautiful, clean, consistent data thanks to all the strategies we talked about in part 1.
But now we need to make sure it's locked down tighter than Fort Knox.
No kidding. Especially in a world where data breaches are becoming like a daily occurrence.
It seems like every day there's another headline about some company losing millions of records.
Yeah, and not to mention the damage to their reputation, it can be catastrophic.
Absolutely. So in our transcript, the interviewer really grills the candidate about how they'd approach building a truly secure data environment.
Especially for companies in those highly regulated industries like healthcare or finance, where the stakes are just astronomically high.
Right. One little slip up could mean massive fines or even legal action.
So no pressure, right?
Yeah.
So how does the candidate handle this high-pressure security interrogation?
Well, they start by laying out this really comprehensive, multi-layered approach to security.
Okay, hit me with those layers.
They talk about everything from data masking and tokenization during ingestion.
Hold on. Back up a second. Can you remind me what data ingestion even means? Sometimes I get all these terms mixed up.
Sure. Data ingestion, it's basically the process of bringing data from all these different sources into your system, whether it's a database, a data lake, or a data warehouse.
Okay, so it's like gathering all the ingredients before you start cooking.
Yeah, perfect analogy. You're pulling data from different places and bringing it all together.
Okay, got it. So data masking and tokenization happen during this gathering process, but what exactly do they involve?
Okay, so imagine you're dealing with super sensitive data, like credit card numbers or social security numbers.
Stuff you definitely don't want just floating around in plain sight.
Exactly. So data masking is like putting a black bar over part of that information.
So you can still see some of it, maybe the last 4 digits of a credit card, but the rest is hidden.
Right. So you can still use the data for analysis or whatever you need to do,
Yep.
but without exposing the sensitive parts.
Okay, I get it. And tokenization, that's kind of similar, right? But instead of masking it, you're replacing it with a random token.
Yeah, like a placeholder. So instead of seeing the actual credit card number, you'd see something like a bunch of X's followed by the last 4 digits.
So even if someone got hold of that token, it wouldn't be useful to them because they don't have the key to decode it.
Exactly. It's like giving each piece of sensitive data a secret code name that only authorized systems can understand.
So clever. But what about encryption? I know that's another big piece of the security puzzle.
Oh, encryption is crucial. It's like putting all your data in a lockbox, scrambling it with a complex algorithm so only those with the right key can unlock it and read the information.
Okay, makes sense. And the candidate talks about encryption both at rest and in transit. What's the difference there?
So at rest, Means the data is encrypted while it's just sitting there in your database or data lake. Like it's got a security guard standing watch over it 24/7.
So even if someone breaks in, they can't make sense of the data without the key.
Exactly. And in transit means the data is encrypted while it's moving between systems, like when you're transferring it over the internet.
So it's protected even when it's on the move.
Exactly. So it's like transporting valuables in an armored truck rather than a regular van.
Okay, I like that analogy. So we've got masking, tokenization, encryption, both at rest and in transit. It's like Fort Knox for our data at this point, right?
It's getting there. It's getting there. But the candidate doesn't stop there. They also talk about access control, mentioning this whole alphabet soup of acronyms. RBAC, DLP, CAM. I mean, it's enough to make your head spin.
Seriously, sometimes I feel like I need a decoder ring just to follow these conversations.
I know, right? But don't worry, we'll break it down.
Yeah.
So RBAC stands for Role-Based Access Control. It's this fundamental principle where you give people access to the data they need to do their job and nothing more.
So a marketing person might have access to customer demographics, but not their credit card information, and a data scientist might only see data relevant to their specific project.
Exactly. You're minimizing the risk of unauthorized access or accidental data leaks by limiting each user's privileges to only what's absolutely necessary.
Okay, makes sense. What about DLP? What's that one all about?
DLP is data loss prevention. These are tools and policies that are designed to prevent sensitive data from leaving the organization's control, whether it's accidental or intentional.
So like stopping someone from emailing a customer list to their personal account or uploading a confidential file to a public cloud storage service?
Exactly. DLP tools can monitor data movement, identify sensitive information, and block any unauthorized attempts to transfer or share that data outside the organization.
It's like having a security guard checking everyone's bags on the way out.
Exactly. And lastly, we have SIMI. That stands for Security Information and Event Management.
Okay, that one sounds pretty intense.
It is. It's basically a centralized system that collects security logs and events from all your different systems and applications.
So instead of having to check each individual server or application, you have one dashboard that shows you everything.
You got it. And the really cool thing about SIMI is that it doesn't just collect all this information, it actually analyzes it using sophisticated algorithms and rules to detect patterns and anomalies that might indicate a security threat.
So it's like having a super smart security guard who can spot suspicious activity that a human might miss.
Exactly. SIMI systems can alert security teams to potential threats in real time, allowing them to respond quickly and prevent or minimize damage.
That's amazing. It sounds like a must-have for any organization serious about data security.
It pretty much is these days, especially with the increasing sophistication of cyber attacks.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here, but I want to circle back to RBAC for a minute because the candidate specifically talks about implementing it in a complex data lake environment. Can you walk me through what that looks like in practice?
Sure. So imagine you've got this massive data lake with tons of different data sets and all sorts of users, data scientists, analysts, engineers, compliance officers, you name it.
Right, like a whole city of data.
Exactly. And RBAC is about making sure each person in that city only has access to the data they need for their specific role and the tasks they need to perform.
But wouldn't that be incredibly complex to manage? I mean, how do you keep track of all those different roles and permissions, especially when people's responsibilities are constantly changing?
Yeah, it can definitely be a challenge. That's where tools like access control lists or ACLs and attribute-based access control or ABAC come in.
Okay, break those down for me. ACLs first.
ACLs are like guest lists for your data. You define specific users or groups and give them permission to access certain data sets or perform certain actions.
So it's a more traditional approach, like a bouncer at a club checking IDs.
Exactly. And ABAC is a bit more sophisticated. It takes into account the attributes of both the user and the data they're trying to access.
Okay, so instead of just listing specific users, you define rules based on their attributes like their job title, department, location, or even the sensitivity level of the data.
Right. So for example, you could have a rule that says anyone with a job title, data scientist, can access anonymized customer data for analysis.
But only someone with the title compliance officer can access sensitive personal information.
Exactly. ABAC lets you create very granular and dynamic access control policies that adapt to changes in user roles, data sensitivity, and other factors. It's like having a security system that automatically adjusts permissions based on who's trying to enter and what they're trying to access.
Okay, that's pretty slick. It takes the guesswork out of managing permissions and ensures that only the right people can see the right data at the right time.
Exactly. And to manage all these complex access control policies, especially in a huge data lake,
Yeah.
you need some powerful tools.
Like what?
Well, the candidate mentions Apache Ranger and AWS Lake Formation. These tools provide a centralized platform for defining and enforcing access control policies across your entire data lake.
So they're like the master key holders, making sure only authorized personnel get through?
Exactly. They give you a single pane of glass to manage who can access what data, what they can do with it, and even when they can access it. They can also help you audit access logs and track any suspicious activity.
Okay, that's starting to paint a clearer picture. We've got all these layers of security in place, from masking and encryption to access control policies and monitoring tools. It sounds like our data is pretty darn safe.
It's definitely well protected. But remember, data security isn't just about technology. It's also about people, processes, and culture.
Oh, right, right. You can have all the fancy tools in the world, but if your employees aren't trained properly or don't follow security best practices, it's all for nothing.
Exactly. You need to build a security mindset that permeates the entire organization. And that brings us to another important point that the candidate makes: the importance of continuous learning and staying up to date with the latest security threats and best practices.
Yeah, the bad guys are always finding new ways to attack, so the good guys need to be constantly learning and adapting to stay ahead of the game.
Exactly. In the final part of our deep dive, we'll explore how the candidate approaches staying ahead of the curve in the ever-evolving world of data management, including security, performance, and everything in between.
And we're back for the final leg of our deep dive into this data architect interview.
We've covered a ton of ground, haven't we? From data quality to security, it's been quite a journey.
It has. We've built our fortress of data, made sure it's locked down tight, and even talked about the human side of things, like processes and culture.
Absolutely. But before we wrap things up, I want to take a step back and look at the big picture. Try to distill some key takeaways from this whole interview.
Yeah, what can we learn from this candidate's experience? What makes them stand out as a data professional?
One thing that really struck me was their emphasis on a holistic approach to data management. It's not just about focusing on one aspect, like security or performance, in isolation.
Right, you have to consider the entire data lifecycle, from how it's collected and ingested to how it's processed, analyzed, and ultimately used to make decisions.
It's like an ecosystem, right? Everything's connected and influences everything else.
And to navigate this ecosystem effectively, you need a solid foundation in both technical skills and those all-important soft skills.
Couldn't agree more. On the technical side, we saw how crucial it is to be comfortable with tools and technologies like Spark, Deke, Prometheus, Ranger. The list goes on.
Yeah, there's a whole toolkit you need to master.
But it's not just about knowing how to use the tools. It's about understanding the underlying principles of data management, like data modeling, data governance, data security.
And how all those concepts fit together.
Exactly. It's about seeing the bigger picture and being able to apply those principles in real-world situations, often under pressure.
Right, because things don't always go according to plan in the real world.
That's where problem-solving skills come in. We saw how the candidate approached that challenge of a failing data pipeline. They didn't just jump to conclusions or start randomly tweaking things.
They took a step back, gathered information, analyzed the situation, and explored different solutions systematically.
A very strategic, data-driven approach.
And that kind of strategic thinking, it's essential for any data professional, whether you're designing complex systems or just trying to extract insights from data.
Absolutely. But as we've discussed, technical skills alone aren't enough. You also need those strong communication skills to explain complex technical concepts to non-technical stakeholders, to translate data into actionable insights, and to collaborate effectively with people from different backgrounds.
Right. It's about bridging that gap between the technical world and the business world.
And helping people understand the power of data, how it can be used to solve problems and achieve goals.
And that brings us to the importance of teamwork and community.
The candidate really emphasized the value of mentorship, both giving and receiving.
Learning from those who've been there before you, sharing your knowledge to help others grow.
And we talked about the incredible resources available in the open source community, where people from all over the world are collaborating and sharing their expertise.
It's a reminder that we're all in this together, learning from each other, pushing the boundaries of what's possible with data.
So to wrap things up, I think this deep dive has given us a glimpse into the exciting world of data management. It's a rapidly evolving field full of challenges and opportunities.
We've seen how data is transforming businesses, industries, even our daily lives.
And being a data professional, it's not just about crunching numbers or writing code.
It's about using data to solve real-world problems, make better decisions, and ultimately create a more informed and connected world.
It's about constant learning, adapting, and collaborating to unlock the full potential of data.
So whether you're a seasoned data veteran or just starting your journey, remember, the world of data is full of possibilities.
Embrace the challenge, stay curious, and never stop exploring.
And who knows, maybe one day you'll be the one acing those data architect interviews.
That's it for our deep dive. We hope you enjoyed the journey and learned something new along the way.
Until next time, keep diving deeper and keep exploring the fascinating world around us.